What's up, guys? This is the Gospel according to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he. Just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Thank you for joining me once again, my friends. I hope all is well with you. Now, guys, let me start off by asking you guys a question. Have you ever noticed that if you tell a white person that they did something wrong, if you tell them that there's something wrong in your neighborhood, there's something wrong with your school, your business, whatever the case may be, you will never hear that white person or any white person say, well, black people do it too. Why are you singling us out? Black people do it too. You'll never hear it. But one of the most frustrating things that I face talking about some of the topics that I talk about, especially ones that center around black concerns, because let's face it, everybody is talking about what's going on with the blacks. Everyone's talking about black fatigue. Everyone's talking about racism, all of that stuff as it relates to black people. But for some reason, when I talk about black concerns as as a black man, inevitably my comment section will get decorated with pretty little comments like, white people do it too. You can't paint all black people with a broad brush. It's not all black people. Of course it's not. I'm black. I got black family members. I got black friends. Of course, I know that it's not all. But for some reason, this is what they throw at you when they want you to shut up. Why don't you talk more about black people or about white people, they'll say. Why don't you talk about white people? Why would I talk about white people like all the time? I mean, I do talk about everybody, but if there's a specific concern with the community that I come from, I think that it's acceptable that I would be able to talk about that exclusively, but you get this pushback, and it's weird because what you end up realizing is that we can't talk to each other about each other because there's always this concern that white people are watching. You can't say this in front of white people. There are far too many black people, not all, that will never see themselves out from under the white shadow. You guys remember there used to be a show back in the 70s or 80s, and it was called The White Shadow? Boy, you're really dating yourself there, Mark. I don't care. I never talk about my age, but I do talk about the age that I come from. And I do remember that. My parents used to watch this show called The White Shadow. And to some degree, I feel like too many black people are stuck in the white shadow where you can't talk about your own concerns. And at the end of the day, that becomes a self-destructive tendency. You're not going to help yourself, and you're definitely not going to help the kids, which brings me to what I want to talk about here, guys. There's this movie out, and it's not a new movie. This actually flew under my radar. If you guys heard of it, you can let me know. I never heard of it, but it was released. It was a limited released film. And the movie is called We Grown Now. You see the thumbnail. It's called We Grown Now. Okay. And this is a 2023 American drama film written, directed, and co-produced by Manal Baig. I think she's from Pakistan. Manal Baig. It stars Blake Cameron James, Gian Knight Ramirez, S. Apatha Murkison, Avery Holiday, Aura Jones, Lil Ray Howery, and Journey Smollett, who executive produced. Journey Smollett, yes, is the sister of Juicy Smollett. Don't hold that against her, all right? But I want to get into the synopsis of this film so we can get into talking about this, and I will give you my impressions on it, okay? Now, it says here, We Grown Now. For Malik and Eric, two best friends who are more like brothers living in the Cabrini Green housing projects of Chicago, childhood brims with unbound possibilities that extend beyond their housing complex. They see their environment through the lens of a youthful, optimistic imagination. The year is 1992, and the two boys are blissfully carefree and bursting with potential, whether excelling at jumping competitions in the playground, dishing out hilariously juvenile jokes, or escaping the doldrums of school. The pair explore their world without caution or hesitation. Now at home, Malik's mother, Dolores, who is played by Journey Smollett, strives to provide a loving foundation for her kids to flourish and where outside barriers don't hinder their dreams. But when a tragic loss rocks their community, the boys' friendship is tested despite their families' efforts to prepare them for the world they are growing up into. They know their lives matter, their aspirations are valid, and that home will always be with the ones they love. Now, as it says here, the turning point in this story, or the link to true life events, in 1992, there was a 7-year-old boy who was murdered. His name was Dontrell Davis, 7 years old, who was shot and killed from the Cabrini Green projects in Chicago. Now, once again, these are the stories that we see all too often that nobody marches for, nobody riots for. You won't hear Black Lives Matter talking about these lives right here. Unfortunately, Dontrell did not lose his life at the hands of a white person. So, no outrage. Just another statistic, and this story kind of takes place around that time in 1992, and how his classmates, how these kids were affected, how their innocence began to be lost when they started to understand where they were. Because the way these boys, and I got to tell you, I got to give it to these young actors here. We're talking about Blake Cameron James, who played Malik, one of the boys, and Gian Knight Ramirez played Eric. These two were best friends. You see them running around all over the place. They got my heart from the very beginning because they reminded me of the dynamic between me and my brother, who has since passed away. But when we were kids, that's all we did. We were slaves, so to speak, to our imaginations, which ironically set us free. All we ever did was imagine. We imagined that we were in far off places. We were inspired by Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Star Trek, and we just had so much fun. Sometimes we just be laying in bed with our eyes closed. It's dark, obviously. We can't see anything because our imaginations would take us away, and we would see through our imaginations. And we used to call them the stories. We would tell the stories of these faraway lands and places and things like that. And that's the reason why, by the way, I get so crazy when people say that Star Wars wasn't safe for black people and everything. Like back then, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek meant everything to us. We weren't thinking about race and all of that stuff. It was ours. It set us free. And I recognize that in these two young boys. They will take your heart if you watch this. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to admit that several times throughout this movie, I got emotional. By the end of it, I was probably crying. I will admit that. All right. Because it really is about innocence lost. And you hear me on this channel talk a lot about why do we have to keep doing stories where we're stuck in the ghetto, we're stuck in the hood, and why can't we see ourselves outside of that? Well, the reason why I want to talk about this movie is because it actually talks to that. They might be stuck in the hood, they might be stuck in the projects in the ghetto, but their imaginations are taking them other places. And after a while, the question is it our imagination, or is there real potential where we can actually do something outside of these walls, outside of this world? Is there anything out there? There are times when these kids are yelling out into the sky, I exist. Literally, they're yelling this. That's probably when I started to choke up. You know what I mean? I exist. I matter. But this isn't about Whitey holding you down. This is about the limitations that you put on yourself. Jurnee Smollett does an amazing job as the mother of Malik. And she's struggling with the painful realization that she's not going to be able to keep her son safe. Not only that, but she's suffering from the stress of having to keep everyone together. She's living with her mother, her son Malik, and his little sister. The father is, I don't know. I don't even think they mentioned the father. He's gone. You know what I mean? And she's working and she's trying to do the best she can. But things are beginning to fall apart. With the death of that young man, things start to change in Cabrini Green Housing Project. Whereas now you have to carry a pass You have to carry ID. You have to be subject to raids by the police just out of nowhere. It could be 2:30 in the morning and the police kick down your door looking for drugs. They're tearing apart the apartment. It's like a nightmare. And something has got to give. And you see that she's starting to crumble, and I'm feeling the stress of it watching it because I don't know if she's going to break, So that's what's going on there. But on the kids level, which is where this movie is solely focused, you start to see how lives begin to take a different road. You know what I mean? Like, depending on the individual. Because you have Malik, who is kind of like the center of the movie, even though him and Eric are the center of the movies. But you see it more from Malik's point of view. You have Malik, who is increasingly becoming more of a dreamer. Not just a dreamer, but he's beginning to see or wonder about the possibilities that lie outside of these projects. Because his mom gets a job opportunity and she doesn't want to take it. She's been there for 2 generations so far, and this is all she knows. She's scared to make a change, but she knows she has to make a change. So the possibility is there that they're going to be moving. Now, these 2 lifelong friends, these 2 little boys, they don't want to be broken up. But this reality has got Malik thinking there is another life out there. There's something outside of these projects. But Eric is becoming more defeated, more cynical, more hopeless. And this is heartbreaking to see, for a child to be like, you see this hole in his heart, this developing here, where he's like, none of this matters. Like, why are you even dreaming anymore? He's asking his friend Malik, so you see that he's losing his spirit. He's losing his innocence. And in the meantime, Malik, the other friend, is starting to wake up to the possibilities of life, and this is something that I can relate to because I went through the same thing. I felt like the life that I had was all that I was going to ever be. I never saw myself as being an adult. I never saw myself as being a father. I told you guys on a previous video before, I just thought I was a mistake. And even though I wasn't going to off myself, it was more than welcome. Death was more than welcome. You want to come get me. I ain't got nothing going on here. What does it matter? And the thing that I think broke me the most is that young Eric, when Malik tells him that his mother, who has passed away, Eric's mom passed away, and Malik tells him that his mother is looking down on him, and guiding him, Eric says, I hope she's not, because there's nothing to see here. Man, that hurt. You know what I mean? Oh, God, that hurt. The movie wrung me out, man, if you can't tell. But I really do, or I really was impressed by this movie. The way that it was shot, it was just such a mood, watching this movie. It was shot from the kids' point of view. When you're looking at the projects, the way they used color, the way the music was used, the direction, what they got out of the kids was amazing. But these are stories that it's so important to tell because we forget about these kids so much. And this is so much of what I talk about, which is why I wanted to point this thing out. I talk about not forgetting the kids, man. I talk about how important it is for them to have heroes to look to, how vital and urgent this is because they need that hope to hold on to, man. And this movie, it nails that, how important it is to when they're grabbing, they're reaching for anything, any little bit of hope in a hopeless environment. But that's where I'm coming from. So even though I talk so much about, why do we always have to be in the projects and stuff? This movie, which is set in the projects, is about realizing that you're not stuck there. Like in your mind, you could be stuck there, but you have to see yourself out first. You have to give yourself permission first. You have to realize that you deserve better first. And I speak this way because I took the long road to that realization. I know of what I speak. I had to realize that I deserve better. And I thank God that I was shown that. Because God knows no one told me. So We Grown Now is a movie that I feel like went under the radar. It was in limited release, so a lot of people didn't see it and everything. But once again, these stories are swept under the rug. If it was a story about a kid being shot by a cop, it would have been in wide release. More people would have known about it. But this is a classic coming of age film that I have to give, if I'm giving it a rating, I have to give it 0. I said 0 flushes. Now, you know my rating. My rating is flushes. If it gets 1 flush, that means there's a little bit in there that it didn't need to be there. 2 flushes, you're kind of pushing it there. 3 flushes, you're getting bad. 4 flushes is full of shit. You know, this one, I'm giving it 0 flushes for what it is, for a coming of age movie that I believe could be shared with your children to make them understand that sometimes the things that limit you are in your own mind. I feel that it's a very, very important film. Too important to be swept under the rug. So guys, you can let me know if you've seen this film, if you've heard of this film. If you watch it, please let me know what you think of it. Or if you saw it, let me know what you thought of it. As always, guys, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe. If you care to donate to the channel, you can always hit the Super Thanks feature on each and every one of my videos. For everyone who does that, I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I will catch you on the next one. This is The Gospel According to Mark with a C. Rock on.